Exclusives are the whole argument. They're the reason you chose a PlayStation over everything else. The reason you stood in line, refreshed stock alerts at midnight, and paid full price without hesitation. Because Sony has a track record of delivering exclusive experiences so polished, so cinematic, and so deeply crafted that no other platform can touch them. And in 2026, that tradition hasn't just continued, it's reached new heights. The PS5 exclusive library right now is stacked with titles that showcase everything this hardware was built to do. Worlds that load in an instant, stories that hit like prestige television, combat that uses every feature of the DualSense in ways that feel genuinely next generation. Today, we're cutting straight to the best of it. These are the PS5 exclusive games you need to play first in 2026. The titles that make owning a PlayStation completely worth it. Let's get into it. Team Ninja took everything they learned from Neo and built their most ambitious project yet, an open-world samurai epic set during the final, bloody years of Japan's Bakumatsu era. What makes this stand out isn't just the notoriously punishing combat, which demands the same precision as their previous games, but the branching choice system that actually changes how factions treat you throughout the story. You're not just a silent protagonist here. Every alliance you build or burn shapes the entire back half of the game. The 3-region map covering Yokohama, Kyoto, and Edo is packed with real historical figures woven into a fictional revenge story that gets genuinely gripping. This is a game that rewards patience. The opening hours are rough, but once the combat clicks, few PS5 exclusives feel this satisfying to master. If you love historical settings with real stakes attached, don't skip this one. This is the game Sony used to prove the PS5's SSD wasn't just marketing talk. It's real, and it's insane. You'll dimension hop between entirely different planets in less than a second, with zero loading screens, mid-combat, without the game ever slowing down. But beyond the tech flex, this is genuinely one of the funniest, most colorful, most replayable action games on the console. The weapon variety is ridiculous. A gun that turns enemies into flowers, a black hole launcher, a shotgun made of glitter, and every single one feels satisfying to use. Rivet, the new playable character, brings a fresh dynamic to a franchise that's been running since the PS2 era and somehow still feels inventive. If you need a game to demo your PS5 to a friend who doesn't believe next-gen hardware matters, this is the one. 15 hours of pure chaotic fun with zero filler. Before Elden Ring became a global phenomenon, this is the game that started From Software's entire obsession culture, rebuilt from the ground up by Bluepoint Games as arguably the greatest remake ever made. This isn't a game that holds your hand, explains its mechanics, or apologizes for being brutal. You will die repeatedly, and that's the entire point. Every boss fight here demands you learn, adapt, and your progress in a way modern games have forgotten how to do. Visually, this remains one of the most jaw-dropping showcases of what PS5 hardware can render. The environments alone look better than games releasing this year. If you've played Elden Ring or any Souls-like and thought you understood the genre's roots, you haven't. Not until you've suffered through the Tower of Latria at 3 in the morning. This is where the difficulty genre that dominates gaming right now truly began. Don't make the mistake of treating this like a side story or a quick cash-in expansion, because it isn't one. Miles Morales stands completely on its own, with bioelectric venom powers that make combat feel totally different from Peter's playstyle, and a story about identity, community, and grief that's more emotionally grounded than almost anything else on this list. Set during a snowy Christmas in Harlem, this game trades scale for intimacy, and it works incredibly well. The Rhino and Prowler showdown alone is worth the price of admission. It's shorter than the mainline games, which honestly makes it the perfect entry point if you want to experience Insomniac's web swinging without committing 30+ hours. Play this between the two mainline titles in release order, and the emotional throughline of this trilogy hits completely different. This is proof that a smaller game doesn't mean a lesser one.
This is where it all started, and honestly, it still holds up better than games releasing right now. Long before the sequel, this was the game that proved a licensed superhero title could actually be one of the best games on the platform, not just a cash grab riding a movie release. The combat system built here became the blueprint every future Spider-Man game copied, including its own sequel. Yuri's betrayal, the Sinister Six storyline, that final confrontation with a certain green masked villain, this story hits harder than most Marvel movies ever managed. If you're going in chronologically to actually understand Peter and Miles' relationship before jumping into the sequel, this is non-negotiable. Skip this and you're missing the emotional foundation the entire series is built on. Play it on PS5 with the remastered visuals and improved ray tracing, and you'll see exactly why this game is still considered untouchable in its genre.
Two Spider-Men, one city, and a villain fusion so devastating it changed how superhero games get made. Insomniac didn't just make Spider-Man bigger. They rebuilt web swinging from scratch, added wingsuits, gave Miles his own bioelectric arsenal, and then threw Venom into the mix in a way the movies never dared. The symbiote storyline here doesn't hold back. Watching Peter slowly lose himself is genuinely one of the darkest character arcs Sony has ever published. New York is now twice the size, Brooklyn and Queens are fully explorable, and traversal feels less like a game mechanic and more like actual flight. This isn't a sequel riding on nostalgia. This is the definitive superhero experience on any console. Full stop. If you've been putting this one off because you think you already know the story, you don't. Trust me, this one earns every bit of its reputation.
Before you touch a single PS5 exclusive on this list, you need to understand why this tiny robot beat Elden Ring, beat Baldur's Gate 3, and walked away with Game of the Year. Astrobot isn't a mascot platformer. It's Sony's love letter to its own 30-year history, hiding hundreds of references to PlayStation icons inside the most creative level design this generation has seen. Every single level uses a DualSense controller in a way no other game even attempts. You'll feel raindrops, you'll feel sand shifting under your feet, you'll feel the difference between metal and wood through your hands. This is a game Sony built to prove the PS5 hardware still has secrets left to unlock. If you own a PS5 and haven't played this, you are sitting on the single most universally loved release of the last 2 years. Start here. Everything else on this list gets better once you understand what this console can actually do.
This is the game that made Shift Up a household name overnight, and it launched exclusively on PS5 before ever reaching another platform, meaning console players got first access to one of the best action combat systems built this generation. Set in a post-apocalyptic Earth overrun by alien creatures called Nightibas, you play as Eve, a warrior whose parry and dodge combat draws heavy inspiration from Bayonetta and Sekiro, but with a rhythm entirely its own. The boss fights here are relentless, gorgeous, and demand real precision. Button mashing gets you killed fast. Visually, this is one of the most stunning environments ever rendered on PlayStation hardware, full of Metroid-style exploration hidden behind its linear combat encounters. The game has since expanded beyond PS5, but if you want the definitive first experience, the one built and tuned specifically for this console, this is still where it began and still worth playing today.
This is the middle chapter of the remake trilogy, and somehow it might be the best Final Fantasy game ever made. Leaving Midgar behind, this game opens up into a genuinely massive open world spanning multiple regions, each with their own culture, side stories, and secrets worth chasing. The real-time combat system built here strikes a rare balance, deep enough for genre veterans to master, accessible enough that newcomers won't feel lost, with a full party of unique characters whose synergy abilities make every fight feel different. But the real reason this game gets talked about so much is one specific story beat late in the game that fans have been arguing about for over a year. And no, we're not spoiling it here. If you grew up with the 1997 original, or you're coming in fresh through remake, this chapter delivers some of the most emotionally devastating hours in the entire franchise's history.
Nobody expected a top-down co-op shooter to become one of the biggest gaming phenomenons of the decade, but here we are. Helldivers 2 takes the satirical, over-the-top fascist propaganda humor of the original and rebuilds it in third-person chaos, where friendly fire is always on and democracy is always under threat from bugs and robots alike. The genius here is the live galactic war. Every mission you complete actually shifts the front lines on a real map shared by the entire player base, meaning your squad's actions matter on a scale most live service games only pretend to offer. Stratagems, the game's signature call-in system for orbital strikes and turrets, create constant, chaotic, hilarious moments with friends that you simply cannot script. This is one of the rare shooters where dying to your own teammates' airstrike becomes the highlight of your night. If you have 3 friends and a PS5, this is mandatory.
This remaster isn't a cash grab. It's Naughty Dog rebuilding one of the most divisive, emotionally brutal stories in gaming, with visual and technical upgrades that make it feel current again. If you played this on PS4 and swore you'd never revisit it because of how it made you feel, that's actually the entire point of this game. Ellie's journey of vengeance forces you to play as characters you're conditioned to hate, and by the end, you'll question every assumption you walked in with. This version adds roguelike survival modes, unlockable behind-the-scenes commentary, and lost-level content cut from the original release. The combat AI remains some of the smartest in the industry. Enemies call out names, react to your tactics, and genuinely feel like people, not targets. This is not a comfortable game. It's not supposed to be. But if you want to understand why this story still gets debated years later, this is the definitive way to experience it.
This is the game that closes out Kratos and Atreus' Norse saga, and it does so with a confidence most trilogies never manage to pull off. Every relationship built across the previous game pays off here. Atreus is no longer a sidekick. He's a fully realized character wrestling with his own destiny, and watching that father-son dynamic evolve is genuinely one of the best-written arcs in gaming. Combat has expanded with a Draupnir spear and refined blades of chaos, giving you more room to experiment than ever before. All 9 realms are finally explorable, packed with side content that never feels like padding. The final act delivers a scale of spectacle that very few games attempt, let alone land. If the 2018 reboot convinced you Kratos could be more than a rage machine, this is the game that proves it completely. This is a masterclass in how to end a story right.
Aloy's second outing takes everything the first Horizon built and doubles down without losing what made it special. The Forbidden West itself is staggering. Snow-capped mountains, underwater ruins you can actually dive into and explore, and machine design so creative you'll want to stop and just study them mid-fight. Combat has been completely reworked with a full skill tree overhaul, new weapon types, and traversal tools like the Shield Wing that make exploring this world feel less like a checklist and more like genuine discovery. The story pushes Aloy's search for humanity's survival into darker, more personal territory, especially once Gaia and the sinister Far Zenith faction enter the picture. Visually, this remains one of the best-looking open worlds ever built for PlayStation hardware, even years after release. If you want a game that rewards you for simply looking up and wondering what's over the next ridge, this is exactly that game.
Hideo Kojima doesn't make games, he makes experiences that argue with you for 40 hours and somehow win. This sequel picks up with Sam Porter Bridges 11 months after the original, now tasked with connecting an entire continent to the chiral network, while natural disasters, hostile factions, and the terrifying BTs try to stop him at every turn. What's changed is scale, bigger vehicles, deeper combat options, and a social strand system that lets your infrastructure choices ripple into other players' worlds in ways that still feel genuinely magical. Norman Reedus, Leah Seydoux, and Troy Baker return, joined by an even stranger cast this time around. This game demands patience most players won't give it, and rewards those who do with one of the most emotionally strange, unforgettable stories on the console. Love it or hate it, nothing else plays like this. Nothing else even tries.
Sucker Punch didn't play it safe with this sequel. They threw out Jin Sakai entirely and built a brand new story around Atsu, a female mercenary hunting down 6 killers who murdered her family 16 years earlier.
Set generations after the original in the snow-covered wilds around Mount Yotei, this game trades some of Tsushima's linear structure for a bounty hunt format, where you choose which of the Yotei 6 to pursue and in what order, meaning your playthrough genuinely won't match anyone else's. The combat has been overhauled with dual-wielding katanas and new stances that make every duel feel like a held breath before release. This launched as a full PlayStation 5 console exclusive. No simultaneous PC release, no Xbox version, just pure, focused single-platform ambition. If open-world samurai action with real emotional weight behind every kill is your thing, this might be the best one Sony has published yet.